Special meeting of the Tiverton Town Council, which is focused on ethics training for members of boards and commissions in the council. And first, Joan, if you could take the roll call for the council.
Councilor Burke.
Here.
Councilor Vieira.
Here.
Councilor Perry.
Here.
Councilor Edwards.
Here.
Councilor Deb Janik.
Here.
Councilors DeMedeiros and Cook are absent.
Thank you. If we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So I will just very briefly say thank you for everyone who has joined us from our boards and commissions and committees. I think we all take our ethical obligations very seriously, and this is an opportunity for us to just be reminded of what those are and how we can address those. And I am going to turn it over to Lynne Radiches, who is a staff attorney with the Rhode Island Ethics Commission, and let her introduce herself in further detail. And thank you, Lynne, for joining us.
Thank you, Mike. My pleasure. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for being here tonight. My name is Lynne Radiches. I'm with the Rhode Island Ethics Commission, where I'm a staff attorney and the education coordinator. I am going to use a PowerPoint tonight, so I'm going to share my screen and get that rolling. There we go. That's from the beginning. So, welcome. Just a couple of housekeeping matters. It would be super helpful if you could kindly hold your questions until the end of this presentation. I ask that for two reasons. First, in my experience, most questions that are going to be asked are actually addressed in the next slide or two. That's one reason. The second is that it won't take us off track, perhaps talking about a subject that's going to be coming up later. So I am happy to answer any questions that anyone has at the end of the presentation, but I'd ask that you kindly wait until then, maybe jot them down in the meantime. Secondly, it would help me out a lot if you kept yourself on mute for the duration of the presentation. A minor sound here and there isn't a problem, but when it's happening on 25 different tablets or screens, it can kind of be distracting. So with that, thank you in advance, and we will get started. Welcome. This is indeed an introduction to the Rhode Island Ethics Commission and the Rhode Island Code of Ethics. I will tell you that this is big picture stuff, okay? There is no test at the end. You are not expected to memorize anything that you learn tonight. It is my hope that you will become familiar with the Ethics Commission and the Code of Ethics, and know that there is nothing that you will hear tonight that you cannot access at a later date, either by looking at the Code of Ethics, which is on our website, or picking the phone and giving me or one of my colleagues a call. So I would rather introduce you to a whole lot of stuff and give you just a little bit about it than hit you over the head with one or two sections of the code and then not covering a whole bunch of other stuff. So if you leave here tonight knowing that there is an Ethics Commission, when you might need us, and how to reach us, as far as I'm concerned, that's a win. So with that, we'll move on. Pardon me. What you are looking at in this slide is Article 3, Section 7 of Rhode Island's state constitution, which addresses ethical conduct. And it states, the people of the state of Rhode Island believe that public officials and employees must adhere to the highest standards of ethical conduct, respect the public trust, the rights of all persons, be open, accountable, and responsive, avoid the appearance of impropriety, we'll talk more about that in a little bit, and not use their position for private gain or advantage, which sounds fair to me. This is also from our state constitution, Article 3, Section 8. Beg your pardon, quick trigger finger I had there. Article 3, Section 8, which states the General Assembly shall establish an independent, nonpartisan ethics commission, which shall adopt a code of ethics, including but not limited to provisions on conflicts of interest, confidential information, use of position, contracts with government agencies, and financial disclosure. And that's exactly what has happened. There are other matters covered in the Code of Ethics, and we'll discuss those, but that was set out in the Constitution. Before we really get rolling into the Rhode Island Code of Ethics, just to orient us, I wanted to speak about ethical conduct in general, all right? Ethics is a standard or philosophy of right and wrong human behavior based on logical reasoning. So ethical conduct is the type of behavior that a logical person would agree is just the right thing to do under the circumstances. But people have different ideas about what makes behavior right and wrong. Let's look at a couple of different ways of viewing ethical behavior. We have ethics based on culture. You've heard, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? Many people think that whether something is ethical depends on the setting in which it occurs, taking into account the local culture, habits, customs. This is the way we've always done things, right? That's one way of looking at ethics. Guess what? Not the way that the Rhode Island Ethics Commission looks at ethics. Here's another way. Ever hear the expression, well, the end justifies the means here? That is looking at ethics based on consequences, where ethical or unethical conduct is determined by looking at the results. And ethical conduct is behavior that results in more positives than negatives in both quantity and quality. Ethics based on consequences, not the way the Rhode Island Ethics Commission looks at ethics. Then we have ethics based on character, where ethical or unethical conduct is determined by asking, what would a virtuous person do under the circumstances? The focus there is on one's character, on one's motives. I'm a fine, upstanding person. How could I possibly violate something called the Code of Ethics? I'm a good guy. All right, we don't look at ethics based on character at the Ethics Commission. Here's what we ask. We ask you to please focus on your action. Forget the result, okay? The Code of Ethics tells us what actions to avoid without regard to culture, without regard to consequence, even without regard to character. Ethical or unethical conduct is determined not by looking at the results, but by looking at the conduct itself and judging its inherent rightness or wrongness. So let me speak to you a bit about the makeup of the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. There are 9 members of the Ethics Commission, and I am pleased to say that only recently, I think they were appointed only last week, we now have a full complement of 9 members on the Ethics Commission. We had been down to 7, and then lost another person. So now we have all 9. Today was our first meeting with all 9. So they come from different walks of life. There are a couple of attorneys on the Ethics Commission. There is a real estate gentleman on the Ethics Commission. There is a physician, a Catholic nun, a college professor. So it's a really great group and a diverse group, and it's a good thing to have a full complement. Take a look at how powerful the Rhode Island Ethics Commission is. They have advisory, investigative, adjudicative, and in some circumstances, removal powers. Now, I've only been with the Ethics Commission for about 2 years, but I'm told that they have never exercised their removal powers. Quite frankly, if someone's in enough hot water that they're about to be removed from their public office by the Ethics Commission, they've usually stepped down first. So while serving on the Ethics Commission, members are prohibited from holding or campaigning for public office. They may not hold office in any political party or in any political committee. They may not participate in, not even contribute to a political campaign. Okay, not so much as a sign on the front lawn of an ethics commissioner during election season. So I am a member of the Ethics Commission staff. Our executive director and chief prosecutor is a gentleman named Jason Grammett. You might know Jason. You might have been to an ethics training given by Jason. Prior to his advancement to the position of director in April of 2018, Jason had my job for, I think, 20 years or so. Okay, there are a total of 5 attorneys on the Ethics Commission, and we have 3 investigators, all of whom are former police officers and/or detectives. They know their way around an investigation. Our financial disclosure officer and guru is Michelle Berg. That's a name you might recognize or at least want to remember. And we have an office manager. All in all, there are about 12 of us. There are 12 of us in the office, and we are at 40 Fountain Street. More on how to contact us in a little bit. So who is subject to this code of ethics? All right, let me tell you. All elected and appointed officials and employees of state and local government, of boards, commissions, and agencies are all subject to the code of ethics. Conflicts of interest. Okay. Conflicts of interest in nepotism are pretty much the bread and butter of the Rhode Island Ethics Commission. There are other matters that we address and that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, but I like to start with conflicts of interest because that's a big one, and it's very important that you become familiar with it. Pardon me. A person subject to the code of ethics, that's you, that's me, may not participate in any matter in which he or she has an interest, financial or otherwise, which is in substantial conflict with the proper discharge of his or her duties in the public interest. Now, to understand this, we need to know what a substantial conflict of interest means. That occurs if it is reasonably foreseeable. That's the next slide. I'll tell you what that means. That he or she, any family member, any business associate, or any business by which he or she is employed or represents will derive a direct monetary gain or even suffer a direct monetary loss by reason of his or her official activity. I will tell you that the Code of Ethics does not discriminate between financial gain and financial loss. The concern here is financial impact. Someone might say to me, you know, Lynn, I may have a potential conflict of interest with this vote, but truth be told, I'm going to take a hit financially if I take part in this and this passes. So that really shouldn't be a conflict. It certainly is a conflict. If it's going to impact you in any way, or someone in your family, or your business associate, or your employer, you can't be involved. More on that later. So what does reasonably foreseeable mean? Here's your window. The conflict need not be certain to occur, but the probability has to be greater than conceivably. That's reasonable foreseeability. It's kind of a lot of airspace in between those two extremes. So the Code of Ethics will talk about your business associates, okay, and in several different regulations and statutes. So I want you to have a general understanding of who your business associates are. Basically, they are persons or entities with whom you are joined to achieve a common financial objective. Let's look at some examples. Your business partners are your business associates. Those are the fairly obvious ones. People you have hired are your business associates. Your attorney, your accountant, your realtor, your contractor. The Ethics Commission has determined that the landlord-tenant relationship is one of business associates. And this next one's important. Any businesses or organizations, even not-for-profits, okay, if you are an officer or serve on the board of directors, and that's regardless of whether you were paid for your service, okay? Pardon me. So business associations do not necessarily remain ongoing forever. So I wanted to tell you what the Ethics Commission looks at when they are trying to determine whether or not there's an existing business association. They're going to ask three questions. They're going to say, are the parties conducting ongoing business transactions? Are there outstanding accounts between the parties? Meaning, does one owe the other money? Is there an anticipated future relationship between these parties? Now, I'll tell you, you don't need all three. Okay, it's not a checklist. Any one of these things will trigger the recognition of an ongoing business association. So the last slide, I used your realtor as an example. If you sold your house in 2015 and you used a realtor and the person had an open house, hopefully there were more bids than you could count, you got more than you asked for, you had the closing, all the funds were distributed, you've been living happily ever after in your new home since 2015 with no intent to sell or buy anytime soon using this or any other realtor. If that realtor comes before you in your public capacity, probably not your business associate, barring any other circumstances not mentioned. Now, if your house is for sale now, and let's say you've even accepted an offer, but the closing's scheduled for 6 weeks out, and that realtor comes before you in your public capacity, that's conflict of interest territory, and you've got to recuse. More on that shortly. The Code of Ethics will also make reference to your family members in a number of statutes and regulations. So I want you to know who your family members are, whether by blood, marriage, or adoption. Here's your list: your spouse, your parents, your children, your siblings, your grandparents and grandchildren, your aunts and uncles, your nieces and nephews, and your first cousins. Those are all your family members. Now, somebody might say to me, Lynn, I haven't spoken to my sister in 4 years. I would no more go out of my way to help her than I would to hurt her. If she has business before me in my public capacity, no worries. I'm going to treat her like I would anybody else. Not a conflict. Guess what? It is a conflict. Okay, a family member is a family member, regardless of the status of your relationship at any given time. Same person might say to me, you know, Lynn, I'm a lot closer to my best friend than I am to my family member. Does the Code of Ethics monitor my friendships? I'll tell you, it does not. And you know why it doesn't? Because it can't. Really, how on earth would the Ethics Commission go about trying to determine whether a friend was a conflict of interest? Well, did you meet in kindergarten? Did you date in high school? Do you take each other's kids back and forth to practices? Do you talk on the phone every day? Do you spend holidays together? It's crazy. So think back to one of those first slides when I talked about the appearance of impropriety, that constitutionally founded goal. When a friend comes before you in your public capacity, that's as good a time as any to exercise that behaving, doing more than what's asked for us, right? Going above and beyond what we're responsible for, and minding that responsibility to avoid the appearance of impropriety. Recusing when a friend is before you is a good example of that. All right. So think of a conflict of interest as a situation where your public duties and your private life intersect. All right. Now, I know the first thing I said tonight was no test at the end. You don't have to memorize anything. But if you leave here tonight knowing anything and committing that to memory, make it this, okay? It is not unethical to have a conflict of interest. It does not violate the Code of Ethics to have a conflict of interest, said the woman from West Warwick with 31 first cousins, okay? It's not the conflict that's the problem. The potential problem is the failure to identify and manage your conflict. And we at the Ethics Commission help people do that every single day. All right, so do I have a conflict of interest? Here's what you're going to ask yourself. Is it reasonably foreseeable, more than conceivably, less than certain? Is it reasonably foreseeable that a decision that I'm helping to make as part of my public duties will result in a financial benefit or detriment to me, somebody in my family or household, my outside employer, my business associate? Ask yourself, even if there's no financial impact, is a family member, a household member, an employer, or a business associate a party to or participating in the matter that's being discussed? If the answer is yes, you have a conflict of interest. You must recuse from any participation in that matter. Now, you might take note in the last two slides, the term household member has been added to these lists of conflicts of interest. For purposes of the Code of Ethics, specifically the nepotism provisions, which we're going to cover in just a moment, if someone lives in your household, regardless of whether that person is related to you by blood, marriage, or adoption, that's conflict of interest territory, okay? So the actual act of recusal is quite simple. We ask that you complete what's called a statement of conflict of interest form, sometimes called a recusal form. And you can often get those from your town hall. If you're out of them or you don't have some or you need some more, call the office, we'll send you some. You can also get them on our website, and you'll get that website address before you leave tonight. Pardon me, please fill it out. Present the original to your presiding officer or appointing authority, your director, your immediate supervisor, and do send us a copy so that we know that you recused when you were required to. All right, on to nepotism. Just going to take a quick sip of water here. Pardon me. Okay. You may not participate in any matter as part of your public duties if there is reason to believe or expect that anybody in your family or your household is a party to or a participant in that matter, if they will derive a direct monetary gain or suffer a direct monetary loss or somehow obtain an employment advantage by reason of your participation. Now, these prohibitions apply regardless of whether or not your family or household member is absolutely objectively the most qualified candidate for that job, absolutely deserves that promotion. That is not the issue, okay? The policy underlying the prohibitions against nepotism recognizes it's just really, really difficult for anybody to be truly objective when considering matters impacting their family and household members. And again, I'm going to throw it out at you again. Don't forget that constitutionally founded goal of avoiding the appearance of impropriety. Do we think that you could conduct yourself in a non-biased matter if someone in your family had a matter before you? Not the point at all. Maybe you could. You probably could. What the Code of Ethics does is it removes from you the responsibility for defending your actions if you take part in something that applies to your family or household member by just taking that whole thing off the table. Okay, so if your family member is objectively the most qualified candidate for whatever job, and he or she is going to apply, it's going to happen without your participation. All right, because that would be nepotism. Here are some other examples of nepotism. All right, not an exhaustive list, but it'll just keep you thinking. I just want these to trigger. Oh, that's nepotism. All right, hiring of a family or household member. We covered that one. Awarding of a contract to someone in your family or household. Any decision regarding your family or household member's property. Appointment of a family or household member to a financially remunerated position. Participation in a disciplinary matter if your family or household member's employment is at risk. These are all examples of nepotism. Okay, here's a scenario. It involves a town council. So just think about this. Andy is a member of the town council. The town has just released a request for proposals, or an RFP, for the construction of a new municipal playground. Billy is Andy's nephew. Billy's got a construction company, and his construction company submits a bid in response to the RFP. I'm going to ask you 3 questions just to think about in your own mind. 1, does Billy need to withdraw his bid for this construction job? After all, his uncle's on the town council. That's the first question. Secondly, can Andy, as a member of the town council, participate in the selection of the construction company for this particular RFP, as long as he discloses upfront, transparent, Billy's my nephew? I want everybody to know that. Okay. Third question, does Andy, as a member of the town council, who knows that his nephew Billy is going to submit a bid in response to the RFP, need to simply withdraw, recuse, and not take part in any of it? If you said number 3, you'd be absolutely right. Andy's got to recuse from all aspects of the bid selection process. And I'll tell you this, when it comes time to develop the RFP for this job, for the construction of the municipal playground, if Andy's aware at that time that he's got a nephew with a construction company that's got a bid, Andy can't even take part in creating the RFP. All right, let's look at those other options I gave you. Billy, not subject to the Code of Ethics. It's not his conflict, it's his uncle's, right? He doesn't have to withdraw his bid. He's not subject to the code. He's just a guy with a construction company looking for his next job. And that second one I threw in there because it sounded kind of plausible. You know, we're all about transparency. And as long as Andy tells everyone up front, this kid Billy's my nephew, so, you know, want you all be aware, not enough. He's got to get out. Okay. Advocacy and supervision. We're still in nepotism here. You may not participate in the supervision, evaluation, appointment, classification, promotion, transfer, or discipline of anybody in your family or your household. And you know what? You can't delegate any of those tasks to your subordinate. If you can't do it, your assistant can't do it for you. Might as well be you doing it yourself. Okay, the Code of Ethics does allow the Ethics Commission to approve what's called an alternate chain of command. All right, now a couple of things to keep in mind for an alternate chain of command. The person who's going to step in for the guy or gal that has the conflict has to be of equal rank or higher than the person that has the conflict. Also, these alternate chains of command cannot just be presumed acceptable prior to the issuance of a duly authorized advisory opinion from the Ethics Commission. And you will leave here tonight knowing what those are, when you might need them, and how to get one. Okay? The actual act of recusal. Some people will say to me, you know, if I recuse from an open meeting, do I need to leave the room? Son of a gun. Okay. Do I need to leave the room? Here's the deal. Recusal does not mean that the public official must leave the room if it's an open meeting. But I'm going to tell you right now, do yourself a favor and leave the room if you recuse, even if it's an open meeting. Do you have to? You don't. But no good will come from staying in that room. Believe me, from the complaints and the calls that we get. Okay. At the very least, leave the table. Okay. Someone might say, isn't it enough if I sit at the table with my hands folded and my mouth closed after I recuse? Nope. Your presence at that table lends an appearance of participation. So at the very least, leave the table. You want to do yourself a favor? Leave the room. Do you have to? Nope. Okay. Now, if the public body is in what's called executive or closed session, different story altogether. Once the official has recused, he or she has no more right to be in that room than any member of the general public. Okay, contracts. We'll go over this briefly. No person subject to the Code of Ethics may enter into any contract with a state or municipal agency unless that contract has been awarded through an open and public process, including prior public notice and subsequent public disclosure of all the proposals that were considered and the contracts that were awarded. Now, there are certain contracts for professional services which are customarily awarded without competitive bidding. Those are not subject to competitive bidding. They still need to be awarded through a process of public notice and the disclosure of financial details. And I've listed just a few examples of those types of professional services that are customarily awarded without competitive bidding. Physicians, attorneys, engineers, architects, accountants, land surveyors, psychologists, things of that nature. Secondary employment, sometimes called moonlighting. Many of us will have a second job in addition to our public position. So let me just cover with you how the Code of Ethics looks at that. You may have a private or public sector job in addition to your state or municipal position. However, you may not accept outside employment that's going to do either or both of the following. Okay, it cannot impair your independence of judgment with respect to your public duties, nor can it induce or require you to disclose confidential information that you acquired in the course of those public duties. That's the big picture. Let me tell you a little bit more about what the Ethics Commission looks at. Pardon me, for someone who wants to get a second job and they're a public official. The commission's going to look at the nexus between your public duties and your private employment, see how close they are. The work that you do in this secondary employment has to be completed outside your normal work hours, without the use of public resources. Okay? A public official or employee may not appear before his or her own agency in their second job. The work has to be conducted outside of areas over which an official or employee has decision-making jurisdiction. And the official or employee may not use his or her public position to solicit business or customers. Let me give you a quick example. Social worker from DCYF, okay? State employee, subject to the Code of Ethics. Let's say that there's a social worker from DCYF who has a full caseload and in her own time, she wants to start a business walking dogs or boarding dogs for people that go away. She loves dogs. So here's what she's not going to do. She's not going to use her DCYF phone number and or email so that to give potential clients an opportunity to contact her that way, right? She's not going to make flyers at the DCYF copy machine advertising her business and then post them up in the elevators at 1 Friendship Street, right? And she's certainly not going to be on a home visit to a foster family, checking on the welfare of a baby. And as she's leaving and saying goodbye, she sees, you know, a cute little puppy in the corner. She's not going to hand a business card to foster mom and say, see you next week. And by the way, if you need anybody to walk this little cutie, or you need to board him if you go away, I'm your gal. But that's an example of what not to do. So that's secondary employment. Here's something that should come as no surprise to anyone. You may not use or disclose for financial gain confidential information acquired in the course of your official duties. And when I say for financial gain, I'm talking about your financial gain or for financial gain for a family member or a business associate or an employer. Okay. Gifts. Okay. If you participate in making decisions, and I know that you do, you may not accept cash or forgiveness of debt from interested persons. I'll tell you what an interested person is in the next slide. You may accept things of value up to and including $25 per instance and $75 per year per interested person. Okay, so what's an interested person? That is a person, business, or representative that has a direct financial interest in a decision that you either make or you help to make. Now, I'm told that years ago, pardon me, that $25 limit on gifts was $150 and $450 per year per interested person. So through the years, it's come down, and it's come down to 25, and I'm sure that there's a good reason for it. So your municipality might say, yeah, Ethics Commission, we get it. We can't be accepting gifts from people if we're tasked with making decisions that are going to affect them financially, because it could look like the old quid pro quo. If they give me a gift and I accept it, they'll expect a little something next time they have a matter before me. But $25, come on, that's barely a sandwich and a cup of coffee. We're going to follow your gift provision, but we're going to make it a $100 limit. You can't do that. Okay, let's say that in your municipality, you say, we get it, Ethics Commission, you're allowing us up to $25 per instance, per person, $75 per year. But, pardon me, we think it's much better idea to just have a zero tolerance policy on gifts, right? Clean and easy, no question, no weighing, no valuing, zero tolerance on gifts. That would be okay. Even if you said, we're going to make our limit $10 on gifts, that would be okay. All right, as you're probably understanding, the spirit is your own policy must either be in line with that of the Ethics Commission for gifts or more strict. All right, so that's the skinny on gifts. Transactions with subordinates. You may not engage in a financial transaction. By that, I mean private employment or consulting, giving or receiving loans, or monetary, political, or charitable contributions with an employee, contractor, or consultant over whom you exercise supervisory responsibilities. Okay, there are some exceptions. Certain financial transactions that are conducted in the normal course of a regular commercial business or occupation, or if the subordinate initiates the financial transaction, or for charitable events that are sponsored by the highest official or governing body of the state or municipality. Okay, pardon me. No person shall solicit or request, either directly or through a surrogate, political contributions from a subordinate for whom in that official or employee's official duties and responsibilities, he or she exercises supervision over that subordinate. Okay, now this does not prohibit or limit the First Amendment right of a subordinate to make political contributions. Bottom line, If someone is your subordinate, you can't ask them through yourself or somebody else just to contribute to your political campaign. However, you can't stop your subordinate from doing it on his or her own without being solicited. Okay? Pardon me. I've done a lot of speaking today. That's why I'm coughing so much. The revolving door, there are several revolving door provisions in the Code of Ethics, and they are in there for a good reason. They want to kind of put a stop to or prohibit public officials and employees from getting an advantage from the relationships and contacts they've made during their time as public servants. So I wanted to just introduce you to one or two revolving door provisions so that you can be familiar with the concept. No elected or appointed official may accept any appointment or election that requires approval by the board over which he or she is a member or was a member to any position that carries with it financial benefit. Okay, and that prohibition continues for 1 year after termination of that person's membership in or on such a body. Okay, you can't be hired by a board that you sat on, all right, unless you've waited a year after leaving that board. Here's another one. No member of the General Assembly shall seek or accept state employment not held at the time of the member's election while serving in the General Assembly, and for, you guessed it, a period of 1 year after leaving legislative office. Here's another municipal official revolving door provision. No municipal elected official or a school committee member, whether elected or appointed, because that's done different ways in different towns, while holding office and for a period of 1 year after leaving municipal office, shall seek or accept employment with any municipal agency in the municipality in which that official serves. The exception is employment that was held at the time of the official's election or appointment. Okay. You may not represent yourself or anyone else before the agency that you are a member of or employed by, or any other agency if your agency is the appointing authority. Okay, you may not serve as an expert witness before your own agency. And these prohibitions continue for 1 year after you leave your public office or your employment, public employment. What do I mean by representing yourself or others? That means you participate in the presentation of evidence or arguments before an agency for purposes of trying to influence the judgment of that agency in your favor or in favor of the person that you're representing. Okay, every rule has an exception. Let's talk about the hardship exception. The Ethics Commission may grant what's called a hardship exception, allowing you to represent yourself before your own agency. To obtain an exception, you must request an advisory opinion. Let me tell you where this happens most frequently. So you have someone who's on a zoning board, and let's say it's a gentleman who sits on a local zoning board, and he wants to put a shed in his backyard at his own residence. And he's got a little problem with the setback requirement, so he needs to seek a variance. The zoning board gives the variance. Dudes on the zoning board can't appear before his own agency. How's a guy to get a shed up, right? So he's going to ask the Ethics Commission for a hardship exception that would allow him to go before the zoning board, his own board, to seek a variance so he can put his shed up. So chances are that the Ethics Commission would allow something like this. However, they're going to caution this gentleman. Now, here's the thing. You can go before your zoning board to get a variance to put your shed in the backyard, but you're going to recuse from participation in hearing your own request. And you're going to let everybody else know that you got an advisory opinion. And again, we'll cover those shortly, saying that you can do this and under the circumstances that you can do, right? Now, if the same guy wants to go before the zoning board, because after he got elected to the zoning board, he got a hot tip on a great piece of property that he went out and bought, and he's going to get together with somebody else and they're going to build a business on it. And all they need to do is take care of some preliminaries before the zoning board. Good luck getting your hardship exception for that. Okay. You want to do that, you wait till you're off that zoning board for a year. Enough on that. Complaints, we do get them at the Ethics Commission. And if you haven't already guessed, they are never filed by your friends. I'm going to just briefly go over complaints, just so you're familiar with them. Anybody can submit a complaint with the Ethics Commission, but you have to do so on a form provided by us. You can get them from us. They need to be signed under oath. We need your original signature. You got to name the individual alleged to have violated the code. We call that person the respondent. Please also identify the respondent's public office. Detail the specific acts which you allege violated the code. A couple things about a complaint. It's not public unless and until it's accepted by the executive director. Also, the complainant is not a party to this action. The complainant may have made the complaint and started the ball rolling with the Ethics Commission, but the complainant is not a party. Also, a complaint that goes before the Ethics Commission is civil in nature. It's not criminal. Okay, we talk about, prosecuting a complaint and a violation of the statutes. It's still civil. Not to say that someone who's got an ethics complaint before them isn't in some hot water with the Attorney General's office down the street for the same activity. But before the Ethics Commission, it's a civil matter. If you do want to file a complaint, you don't have to, but we ask people, pick up the phone, give us a call. You're going to speak with one of our investigators, and it'll give you a chance to kind of blow off some steam. And here's where I am going to file a complaint. You can maybe talk about the code a little with this person. At the very least, make sure you have the right form. Okay, so we ask that you do that. Initial determination, that's the very first stage. Once a complaint has been accepted by Jason, okay, it's going to go to the initial determination phase before the Ethics Commission. And what they do there, it's a really low standard. The Ethics Commission will determine whether the complaint properly alleges facts that, if true, yeah, that would be sufficient to constitute a violation of the law. They only look at the complaint itself, the four corners, and they say, if this is true, that's a violation. Okay, so they meet in closed executive session, and the Ethics Commission is going to decide during initial determination, we're either going to dismiss this thing or we're going to authorize a full investigation. And then off they go to the races with that. And at any time following an initial determination, the Ethics Commission and the respondent, they can settle informally. Okay, they can come up with something that they both agree to, the prosecutor and the respondent, but it needs to go before the Ethics Commission to be accepted, okay, before the matter can be resolved. Advisory opinions. This is pretty much the other big thing that I do for the Ethics Commission. Myself and my colleague and friend, Theodora Papa, Teddy and I are responsible for drafting maybe 95% of the advisory opinions that come through our office. So I wanted you to know what they are, when you might need one, and how to get one. An advisory opinion is a legal interpretation of the Code of Ethics. It gets issued by the Ethics Commission. It provides specific guidance about a particular and impending circumstance, and it's based on the representations of the petitioner. The person who seeks the advisory opinion is called the petitioner. All right, your takeaway here is that the Ethics Commission does not issue advisory opinions on hypotheticals. Okay, these things turn on their facts. I'll talk more about that. So if we get a letter that says, hey, you know what I've always wondered, can you do it? It would be lovely to answer that, but we can't. Okay, it's got to be a particular pending circumstance. What else about advisory opinions? Anybody subject to the code can ask for one. All right, it's got to be about, again, about a particular provision of the code which may affect him or her. The time to do this before you take any action. Okay, better an advisory opinion today than a complaint tomorrow. Okay, the other thing is this: the Ethics Commission does not opine on past conduct, prospective conduct only. So if you say, hey, I took a vote last November, I'm pretty sure I was okay. Can I get an advisory opinion just confirming that? Nope. The time to do that was before you took your action. If you want to make sure that you're okay, you hold your breath if somebody files a complaint. Okay, that's how that would be resolved. Second thing to remember is if you're going to seek an advisory opinion, it's got to be pertaining to you. You're not going to say, you know, my brother-in-law sits on the planning commission and he's got a matter coming up. Does he have to sit it out? happy to answer the question if your brother-in-law gives us the call and asks for it. How do you get an advisory opinion? To request an advisory opinion, you must either mail or hand deliver to the commission a letter containing your original signature and some additional information. Before I go on, this is a pre-pandemic slides, all right? During the pandemic and until further notice, we accept requests for advisory opinion via email. In fact, we encourage that method, okay? But we do, whether you snail mail or drop it off or email it, we do need to know your name, your phone number, and your email address. Briefly, the name, jurisdiction, and powers of your agency, commission, or office. Please tell us your official position. Tell us a little bit about your duties, the nature of the potential conflict, a summary of the relevant facts, and do tell us if you have any time constraints. All right, the Ethics Commission generally meets twice each month, once each month in the summer for the most part, always on a Tuesday morning, always at 9 a.m. Okay, again, we had a meeting today. The drafts of these advisory opinions are due a whole week before the meeting. So although we try and address advisory opinions, address them in the order in which they're received, someone might seek an advisory opinion and not need an answer right away. Someone else might be just under the wire and say, oh, I just never got around to asking and I really need to know this. We'll try and accommodate you in that circumstance, okay? For some reason, I'm not exactly sure why, we are presently getting requests for advisory opinions at the same rate that Santa gets letters in November. They're just, I know we do give them away, but we are just turning them out as fast as they can. They're coming in a lot. So what happens after you submit your request for an advisory opinion? You're going to get a letter or an email saying, we received it, it's being processed. You're going to get a draft recommendation by a staff attorney. It will say draft across it because you know what? It's not an advisory opinion upon which you can rely unless and until the Ethics Commission approves it, all right? You are strongly encouraged to attend the Ethics Commission meeting at which your request will be considered. You know what? The commissioners might have a question of you. All right, if you're not there to answer it, they may have to kick it over to another date. Have I seen them go through without the petitioner present? Absolutely. But also you might have questions for them and you might just want to see how the whole process works. You need an affirmative vote of 5 commissioners, regardless of how many are sitting, to get your advisory opinion approved. You're going to get a written copy, right? It's going to be available on our website. And you should know that both your advisory opinion and the request seeking it are public records and are subject to ACRA requests. So I tell you that these advisory opinions are on our website, and they are. You may go on our website and you'll see them listed by year dating back 2 decades, okay? You can type a couple of terms in the search bar on the Ethics Commission website that have to do with your question. Up pops 6 or 7, 12 advisory opinions. You start reading one from 2018 and you say, son of a gun, if that's not my question, I mean, that is my question. Just change the names and the dates, and that's it. I'm just going to read this one, see what they told this person, and I'll just do that. Please don't, okay? Do read it, get an idea of which way the wind might be blowing when you go before the Ethics Commission on yours. You might even see Teddy or I cite the advisory opinion you found in yours to support our recommendation for yours. But the only person who can rely on an advisory opinion is the person for whom it was prepared, okay? And I think I mentioned we've been doing these meetings via Zoom since April, and it has worked out fantastic for people. It's so convenient to be able to log in on Zoom and attend an Ethics Commission meeting. Ask anybody on Block Island, they will tell you. Okay, we're rounding the corner. We're nearing the end. Financial statements. Who's required to file a yearly financial statement? All state elected officials, all state appointed officials, all state employees who hold a major decision-making position in a state agency, all municipal elected officials, and certain municipal appointed officials. And it usually, as I heard some folks talking about before we started tonight, it usually has to do with your level of decision-making over an exercise over a certain amount of money. Okay, chances are strong. I am willing to bet that if you are required to file an annual financial statement with the Ethics Commission, you are well aware of it because we reach out to you with a reminder. If you have a question, you say, I've never filed one of these things. I wonder if I have to. Give us a call. We'll look it up. We'll let you know. The purpose of financial disclosure, I assure you, it is not intended to harass or annoy or embarrass. These things help ensure that people acting in the public interest do not use their public positions to further their private financial interests. Okay, they help identify conflicts between an official's financial interests and his or her public office. They increase the overall transparency in government appointments and decision-making. And you know what? They help further the public's confidence in government. And what's wrong with that, right? No one's going to ask you how much you owe on your house. No one's going to ask you how much your house is worth. We're not looking for that or numbers. You're trying to identify relationships for the most part. Okay, when must this statement be filed? I know that you know because I heard you talking about it. Last Friday in April, okay? Or within 30 days of your appointment to a public position or your filing of a notice of organization with the Board of Elections or declaring yourself as a candidate, whichever of those comes first. And all officials required to file must continue to do so for a full year after you've been out of office. Okay, because the financial disclosure statements that are due in April of 2021 are for the year 2020. Okay, we encourage you to file online at the Ethics Commission website, www.ethics.ri.gov. Okay. Somebody wants to do it on a paper form the old-fashioned way, give us a call, we'll mail one out. But I'll tell you, by doing it online, it retains your information year to year. Okay, you need only go in and update it. Not fully comfortable on the computer, get somebody from my office on the phone. They'll help you. Have a question while in the middle of filling it out? If it's between 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m., give us a call. Outside those hours, leave a message, we'll give you a call, okay? This is where we are located, 40 Fountain Street in beautiful downtown Providence on the 8th floor. Our office hours are 8:30 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. Tell you what, during the pandemic, there are generally, of the 12 of us that work at the Ethics Commission, maybe 3 or 4 in the office on any given day. The rest of us telework from home. I'm coming to you from home this evening, but we always check our email constantly. It's always on, and we check our voicemails all the time. Our telephone number is 222-3790. You want to reach me directly, it's extension 24. And during the pandemic, please avoid just dropping into the Ethics Commission. It's best if you call first to make sure that we're receiving people that day or that someone's there to meet with you. You have been delightfully attentive, for which I'm grateful. I am going to stop sharing my screen now and make myself available for questions. I think we did fairly good for time. This is a lot of stuff. You may not have any questions, and that's fine. Other times I sign off and I check my voicemail and I get a question or two from someone who said, you know, I wanted to ask you something, but I just wanted to do it in private. That's fine too. You might want to let this stuff sink in a little bit and then come up with a question and give us a call. But if anybody wants to chat about anything now, at your service.
Thank you very much, Lynn. That was great, very informative.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you.
Even if it's just reminding us of our obligations, and that's always helpful. I'm just trying to pan the audience to see if I have any hands, but if anybody has a question, please, raise your hand. Bill, Viera.
Hi, Bill.
Hi, good evening. Thank you.
Bill, can you just remind Lynn what your role is? And anybody who has a question, just quickly remind her what your role is.
Hi, Lynn. My name is Bill Viera, and I'm a town councilor here, first year here in Tiverton.
Oh, welcome. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. I think I understand recusal and the conflicts of interest that you presented tonight. Question is, the option of abstaining, is that even reality? Is that something of a lower degree? And how does that work?
That's a very good question, Bill. And once upon a time, I had a slide in there that addressed abstaining. Maybe I should put it back in, but let's cover that quickly. If you are required to recuse, recusal means you're not taking part at all in any of it. Abstaining just means you're not going to vote. Okay, you might take part in the discussions, the consideration of something, but when it comes to voting, you're going to abstain. For purposes of the Code of Ethics, if you're required to recuse, you are out from the start. You can't discuss it, you can't be part of any of it, and you can't vote. Okay, I hope that helps.
So would you abstain just if the situation, it didn't meet the criteria that you described tonight, but maybe you had a relationship with the person, or when would you abstain?
Okay.
From?
Okay. I'm going to use the term recuse because to me, abstain does not include enough. Abstain just means you're not going to vote. If you have a conflict of interest, you recuse completely. You're not taking part in any of it. Now, that raises an interesting point. There's an expression, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I used that expression when I delivered a recent advisory opinion where something wasn't technically a violation of the code. But because someone was seeking an advisory opinion, I said, this has really bad optics. I think it looks bad. I think it smells bad. And even though you might survive a complaint, you asked, I'm recommending you don't do it. Okay. So along those lines, you may be ready to consider a matter before you, and you might say, technically, I don't have a conflict of interest, but I get this feeling that I don't want to touch this. And I've got my own reasons. I don't know. I know this person. I bowl with him or her on, Wednesday nights, or, her kid is married to my second cousin's nephew and technically not a family member, but you just want out. You have permission to recuse if you feel conflicted. You might even say without telling anybody, I can't be fair. I really have an opinion on this. I mean, it's okay to have an opinion. We're all bring to the table our own life experiences. But my position, if you feel that for some reason you can't be fair and you're saying, I don't feel like I should take part in this, don't think you need to have a strict violation of the code to recuse. You can recuse. I hope that helps. If it doesn't,
Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions, and I'm going to pan the screens because I have two groups of folks to look at. Not seeing anybody else want to ask a question? Oh, Deb.
This is a quick question. So when you talked about family members,
Yes.
is once a family member always a family member, or in the case of a divorce, are they still a family member?
They are not. And you know what's funny is when I do that slide and I say whether by blood, marriage, or adoption, here's your list, I usually follow it up with, and everyone's question that's watching this slide is asking at the same time, is my ex-husband or my ex-wife a family member? No, because it's not by blood, marriage, or adoption, right?
So, Lynn, can you extend that to a legal guardianship for somebody who's, say, under 18, or somebody who was your legal guardian and is now over 18, and that legal guardianship doesn't really hold legal water anymore?
So in other words, if you were the legal guardian for an individual who then turned 18,
Yes.
does the individual still live in your home?
Let's say they don't. Because if they're in the home, I understand that they fall under it.
Well, it's not a family member, right? You're not related by blood, marriage, or adoption.
Let's agree with that, yes.
And it's not a household member. So based on what I'm hearing, I'm going to say it's not an issue. But that gives me a good chance to give you my big lawyer disclosure here. Nothing I say this evening is binding on the Ethics Commission, okay? And I was also going to say somewhere between taking no action, when you have a question and seeking a full-fledged formal advisory opinion, you can call us. Just chat about it like we're doing now. But keep in mind that when you speak with me or one of my colleagues, we're happy to try and help you work through something, and we may have some advice for you, but it's not binding on the Ethics Commission. Okay. You know, what we say to you is a step or two above drunk uncle at Thanksgiving, I like to say, but it's not something you can take to the bank. Like Lynne Radiches said that my former legal guardian is not a conflict of interest. So you're just going to get us both in trouble. Okay. So you have to kind of hang your questions on particular facts, and advisory opinions can take a week, sometimes 2 to write. An easy one might be a day or 2, but they're always going to depend on the facts. Okay. But based on what I'm hearing from you, I'm not thinking that a former person for whom you served as legal guardian who no longer lives in your home is conflict of interest territory.
Thank you. Other questions for Lynn? I also want to note, and I appreciate that we have a lot of folks who have come to all 3. We've had sessions on the OMA and also on APRA. So, and a lot of folks have come to all of them. So I want to thank all those folks from all of our volunteers, as well as our elected officials who have participated in these.
And I see Chief Jones. I think you could give this training now, Chief Jones. You've sat through it 2 or 3 times, I'm sure.
Hi, Lynn. Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Nice to see you.
It's good to see you.
All right, if nothing else from anyone, I want to thank Lynn formally, and we're just gonna take a minute to do our meeting closure adjournment vote and sign off. Thank everyone else for joining us again.
It's been my pleasure. Don't be a stranger if you need us.
Thank you. So, council members, do I have a motion to adjourn, Bill?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Bill, then Joe. Joe is the second.
Fight over it.
All those in favor, Bill Vieira,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Deb,
Yes.
and I think that's all the council members except for myself. And myself is yes. We are adjourned. Thank you again.